I'm used to have research field migration. I'm funded by the
Hi everyone, thank you for coming. So, as Mike explained, we are currently working on an ESRC-funded research project at the University of Sussex. It's entitled Optimising Refugee Resettlement in the UK, and it's called a comparative analysis because we are comparing refugees who have been resettled to various locations in the UK. As Mike explained, it's a multidisciplinary project, so there's three main investigators who Mike just introduced. I am the research fellow on the project. To explain to you what we are doing, so we're investigating the integration and well-being of resettled refugees in 4 different cities. One of them is right here in Brighton and Hove. We also include people in Greater Manchester, in Norwich, and at the end this was not originally planned, but we included Sheffield because we had difficulties finding enough people who met our criteria. And one of those criteria was that we look only at those who arrived in 2010 or earlier. And the reason for that is that after 5 years you can apply for citizenship, and there's a certain level of integration that is applied when you're applying for citizenship. So that was the idea behind it, and we followed these people for 2 years. So basically, roughly 1 year apart. I'll go over that in a little bit. So we have 3 time points at which we spoke to these resettled refugees. The way we collected our data was by first of all creating a team of research assistants. So I'm the research fellow. There's 2 PhD students, but we also have 11 research assistants who are part of refugee communities in all of the locations that we work. So as you can see, here are some pictures from the training week. We had a training week at the University of Sussex where we trained people how to be research assistants. We went over the some sensitive issues with data collection, etc., etc. The most important reason why we have this group of people helping us out is because we don't have these links within the communities, and they do, of course. And also they've been through the experience, so they helped us put together the questionnaires, the interviews, the topics that were important to them in terms of integration. So we started off with focus groups. So we had in each location a group of men, a group of women, and a group of young people. And we spoke to them about what do they consider to be integration, what helped them to integrate, what helped them improve their well-being. And we did this once, and then we used those focus groups to inform questionnaires. So we did questionnaires in each location and also interviews. So like I said, we spoke to people 3 times. It's a longitudinal design. And we started off in early 2014, which is when we collected 280 questionnaires. So we approached 280 resettled refugees in the UK. We also did 31 interviews, and roughly a year later, so that was last year, we managed to convince people to, out of those 280, 211 people filled out a second questionnaire. And currently we're in the middle of the 3rd data collection. So we're constantly going back to the same people to follow them over time, to see how is their well-being, how are discrimination experiences, how are their networks expanding or not expanding, etc., etc. So to give you an idea of who we've spoken to, so we have 37 participants in Brighton who are all of Ethiopian background. We also have 44 people of Congolese background in Norwich, and a very small number of 4 Iraqis in Norwich as well. you can see that the majority of our participants come from Manchester, as you can see here, from a variety of groups, Ethiopian, Congolese, Iraqi, and Somali. And then finally, we had 18 participants, all Iraqis, from Sheffield. So we were slightly limited by the number of people available in each location. For example, in Brighton, there are only people resettled from Ethiopia. So that's the reason why there's only Ethiopians included in Brighton. And we only spoke to adults, but the age range was quite large, so between 18 and 80. So it's a very large variety of issues that take place, of course, depending on people's age. Now, to give you a little bit of an idea about the first results that we've had, we have analyzed the results from the first time point. This graph shows you the employment by location. So this here is Brighton and Hove. The dark colors, dark pink is the percentage of people who were employed, of our participants. So this is resettled refugees who were employed. The lighter column is the percentage of people in the general population of that city who are employed. Yeah, so this is Brighton and Hove. You can see way more people in the general population are employed than the people in our sample of resettled refugees. This is Greater Manchester. The percentage of people who were employed was even lower. In Norwich, it's slightly better. And in Sheffield, somewhere in between. There was a significant difference between Norwich and Greater Manchester in terms of employment. So there were more people employed, percentage-wise, in Norwich than there were in Manchester. But this is not entirely a fair comparison because we, of course, have way more participants in Manchester than we do in Norwich. So there's a few, methodological issues there. Now, interestingly, there was no difference in people's well-being, depending on whether they were employed or not. Now, from speaking to them in the interviews, one of the reasons might be that this is because people are employed at a much lower level than their education and their previous employment, and which of course can be very, very frustrating. So we have doctors being cleaners, high court judges being traffic wardens. So I think that kind of explains why. Now, employment does, of course, facilitate integration. It facilitates language learning. So it's still important to look, okay, so what does predict employment? You can see here that those who were literate before arrival, this is factors that facilitate employment of things that they had before they moved here. So those who were literate before they moved had a higher chance of getting a job here than those who were not. You can see education also had an effect, as in those who were higher educated before arrival have a higher chance of getting a job here in the UK. And then those who had a job back home also had a higher chance of getting a job over here compared to those who did not. So that shows that those who are the most vulnerable, as in who have the highest risk of not getting employment over here, are those with very little or no education, which is often those who come from rural areas or those who have lived in refugee camps for a very, very long time. Now, when I asked what are your main difficulties in finding work to those who are not employed, you can see this is the majority: language barriers and qualifications not being recognized in the UK. I'm sorry, I noticed that it's a bit too low for some of you. So this bar is language barriers, and this qualifications not being recognized in the UK. So this shows the number of times that it was mentioned. So the amount of people mentioning this, you can see here, is about 40 people for each category, which is quite a lot. So this also came forth in the interviews, and a lot of people saying language barriers is not only making it difficult to get a job, it's a barrier against complete integration, against participating in society. Then finally, I'll give you a little bit of an idea about well-being. So in the questionnaire, I used the same questions measuring well-being as the Office of National Statistics does. meaning that I can compare the answers of the sample that we have here to how the whole general population of the UK fills out questions. So they measure well-being with 4 questions: satisfaction with life, what they're doing being worthwhile, their happiness, and their anxiousness. Now, if you have a look here, you can see that the number of refugees who scored a 7 or higher on happiness, things being worthwhile, and life satisfaction here are much lower. So those who have a 7 or higher than those in the UK or in the EU, which means that on average satisfaction with life is much higher amongst the general population in the UK and in Europe compared to refugees. Here, life being worthwhile, same thing. Many more people find that the things that they do in life are worthwhile when they're part of the general population compared to the sample of refugees that we had. Happiness is higher amongst the general population. Anxiety is higher amongst refugees than it is amongst the general population. Yeah. So there's many correlates that we found with well-being. I won't go over those now, but we might, if you have any questions, we can maybe talk about that in the discussion. So I think I'll leave it at this for now. Thank you.